Zex Talon's mandibles click softly as he analyzes the child's movements. Her fingers dance through the holographic interface with practiced precision, each gesture triggering complex maneuvers that should require multiple command inputs. The simulation itself presents a level of physical accuracy that troubles him. The gravimetric calculations, radiation effects, and momentum conservation all align with actual space combat parameters, not the simplified physics he would expect in entertainment. "What is your tactical objective?" he asks, his translator struggling to adopt a tone appropriate for addressing a juvenile human. Mira doesn't look up. "Surviving," she says matter-of-factly. "I'm outnumbered 4-1, and they've cut off my supply lines. Conventional defense is impossible." The Admiral's primary eyes narrow. Then surrender is the logical option. This comment finally breaks the girl's concentration. She looks up at him, her dark eyes widening as she fully processes the alien standing before her. Not with fear, Zex Talon notes, but with curiosity. Surrender is never the only option, she says with the absolute certainty only a child can muster. "Watch." She returns to the simulation where her small fleet of outdated corvettes and a single damaged cruiser face imminent destruction from a vastly superior force. Rather than consolidating her remaining ships, she disperses them in a pattern that appears completely random to the Admiral's tactical mind. 3 of her smallest vessels accelerate directly toward the system's star, a maneuver that would be suicide in actual combat. "You're sacrificing ships unnecessarily," Zex Talon observes. "I'm sacrificing ships necessarily," Mira corrects him, her attention still fixed on the holographic battlefield. "Those corvettes are drawing their heavy cruisers toward the star. The solar radiation will disrupt their targeting systems more than mine, since they rely on quantum-locked precision. My older ships use redundant analog backups." The Admiral's auxiliary eyes blink in sequence, a sign of surprise among his species. The child has identified a critical vulnerability in advanced targeting systems that even some of his own tactical officers miss. As he watches, the pursuing enemy cruisers enter the radiation field, and their previously perfect formation begins to waver. "Now watch this," Mira says with unmistakable pride. Her damaged cruiser, previously hidden behind the system's 3rd planet, suddenly executes a high-energy burn that Zex Talon's tactical implants calculate would tear apart its structural integrity in real combat. Yet in the simulation, the ship holds together, just barely, as it accelerates on an intercept course with the now vulnerable enemy formation. "That acceleration would kill the crew," the Admiral states. "Not if they're in emergency gel immersion," Mira counters. "Survival rate drops to 74%, but it's better than 0. The observation silences Zex Talon. The hegemony's tactical doctrine hasn't considered gel immersion during hike maneuvers for centuries. The technology was deemed too primitive compared to inertial dampening fields. Yet this child casually integrates outdated technology with aggressive maneuvering to create an advantage. As the diplomatic alarms begin to sound in distant corridors, Zex Talon makes no move to leave. His mission to assess human military capability suddenly seems incomplete without understanding how this simulation ends. The girl's cruiser, systems failing but momentum carrying it forward, deploys a cloud of debris directly into the path of the enemy formation. The radiation-compromised ships, unable to track and destroy the incoming particles, suffer catastrophic damage as kinetic impacts cascade through their formation. "That's not possible," Zex Talon whispers as the simulation calculates a successful defense. Mira looks up, her expression showing neither pride nor arrogance, just the simple satisfaction of solving a difficult puzzle. "It's not probable," she corrects him. "But improbable isn't the same as impossible. That's the first rule of Stellar Commander. How did you learn this approach?" Zex Talon asks, his translator struggling to mask the military interest in his tone. His exoskeleton shifts as he leans closer to the holographic display, the crystalline segments catching the simulated explosions in fractured light. "Trial and error, mostly," Mira replies, already setting up another scenario. I lost that simulation 87 times before figuring out the solar radiation trick. My brother says I'm too stubborn. 87 failures without abandoning the scenario. The Admiral's neural implants flagged this as a significant cultural data point. Hegemony educational protocols would have redirected a student to more suitable challenges after 3 unsuccessful attempts. In your culture, persistence despite repeated failure is encouraged, he asks. Mira looks at him oddly. How else would you learn the hard stuff? Before he can formulate a response that wouldn't reveal too much about hegemony psychology, she continues. This next one's called Broken Mirror. It's my favorite for tournament prep. The holographic display transforms into a binary star system with unusual gravimetric properties. Mira's forces appear vastly superior on paper. Advanced battlecruisers against primitive gunships. But the scenario places her fleet at a critical disadvantage. All long-range sensors are disabled by stellar interference. The sensors don't work, so everyone panic builds big guns and flies in defensive formations, she explains, rolling her eyes. That's what all the beginners do. Total waste. The logical approach would be to maximize firepower given sensor limitations, Zextalon states, reciting standard hegemony doctrine for compromised intelligence scenarios. Yeah, if you want to lose. Mira laughs. Watch. Instead of consolidating her forces or increasing weapon output, she immediately disables the engines on 3 of her largest ships, leaving them to drift. The Admiral's tactical mind registers this as tactical surrender, until he observes her redistributing power to passive sensor arrays that would be considered obsolete by hegemony standards. Gravimetric displacement detection, she explains, noting his interest. No targeting capability, but it can feel large masses moving nearby. Super old technology, but it doesn't get jammed by the radiation. The girl's fingers manipulate the interface with practiced speed, creating a scattered network of passive detection points from her seemingly abandoned capital ships. Meanwhile, she reorganizes her remaining fleet into small, maneuverable squadrons that make no attempt to engage the approaching enemy. You're surrendering the initiative, the Admiral observes. I'm surrendering nothing, Mira corrects. I'm listening. As the enemy formation enters the detection grid, their movements create subtle gravitational ripples that her distributed sensor network triangulates. The Admiral watches as incomplete but tactically sufficient positional data flows to Mira's scattered squadrons. Rather than engaging in conventional combat, her ships execute a series of precisely timed microjumps, appearing momentarily to deliver concentrated fire before vanishing again. Technically, they should be able to track my jump signatures, she admits. But the AI never adapts quickly enough to the hit-and-run pattern. Real humans figure it out faster, though. You have to keep changing the jump intervals against good players. Zextalon's primary eyes widen slightly. The child isn't just executing a predetermined strategy. She's adjusting in real time based on predicted counter responses, thinking several moves ahead while maintaining multiple tactical threads simultaneously. More disturbing still, she's casually discussing the limitations of artificial intelligence compared to human adaptability, a distinction that underpins centuries of hegemony military doctrine. Diego beat me with this scenario last week, she continues, oblivious to the Admiral's growing disquiet. He figured out how to use solar flares to mask his approach vectors. Totally unfair, but pretty brilliant. Want to see that version next? Yes, Zextalon replies, his analytical curiosity now fully engaged. I would find that educational. Your turn, Mira announces, sliding the holographic interface toward the Admiral. The control surfaces automatically adjust to accommodate his alien physiology, an unexpected customization feature that Zextalon notes with professional interest. The parameters, he asks, 6-fingered hands hovering over the controls with military precision. Defend the Proxima colony with minimal casualties, Mira explains. You've got 12 ships against their 26. They're trying to capture the orbital stations, not destroy them. Zextalon's neural implants immediately calculate optimal defensive formations based on 3 millennia of hegemony military doctrine. He positions his capital ships at strategically crucial intersections, creates layered defensive screens with his support vessels, and establishes clear firing lanes that maximize his technological advantages. The formation is mathematically perfect, a textbook implementation of superior force management that has won hundreds of actual space battles under his command. Interesting approach, Mira comments, her tone suggesting the opposite. She hugs her knees to her chest as the simulation begins, watching with the focused attention of someone who already knows how a story ends. The enemy forces approach exactly as the Admiral anticipates, probing his defensive screen for weaknesses. He responds with precision strikes against their vanguard, maintaining formation discipline while steadily eroding the opposing force. For the first 4 minutes of the simulation, his tactical experience appears to be prevailing. "You're making it too easy for them," Mira says suddenly. "My casualties are minimal, and their advance has been halted." Zextalon responds, mandibles clicking with confidence. "Yeah, but they're feeding you data on their approach vectors, watching how you respond. Look." Her small finger points to subtle shifts in the enemy formation, adjustments so minor that they initially appear insignificant. Before the Admiral can reassess, the opposing force executes a maneuver that defies conventional military logic. Their ships deliberately scatter, abandoning mutual support positions and seemingly sacrificing tactical coherence. His perfectly optimized firing solutions suddenly become inefficient as targets disperse. More troubling, the scattered enemy vessels begin operating with apparent independence, each pursuing objectives without centralized command structure. They've switched to distributed command, Mira explains. Each ship captain has mission parameters, but makes their own decisions about how to accomplish them. That's inefficient, Zextalon objects, rapidly adjusting his formation to compensate. It creates redundancies and wasted resources. It also makes them unpredictable, Mira counters. You can't target their command structure because there isn't one. The Admiral's perfect formation, designed to counter a hierarchical opponent, now becomes a vulnerability. His ships maintain precise positional data that the scattered enemy force exploits, concentrating fire from multiple vectors before disappearing again. The simulation calculates mounting casualties as his carefully arranged defense begins to crumble. "They're using your predictability against you," Mira says, not unkindly. "Try something they won't expect." Zextalon's primary eyes narrow in concentration. 3 millennia of military doctrine tell him to maintain formation and discipline, the cornerstone of hegemony tactical superiority. Yet the simulation clearly demonstrates this approach failing against an opponent who refuses to follow conventional engagement protocols. "What would you suggest?" he asks, mandibles clicking in reluctant admission that his approach isn't working. Mira's eyes light up. "Break your own formation. Split your command functions between ships. Let each captain interpret their orders creatively." "That would introduce tactical chaos," the Admiral objects. "Exactly," Mira grins. "Fight chaos with chaos." "Just one more," Mira insists as the hegemony security detail hovers anxiously at the entrance to the observation dome. Their crystalline exoskeletons catch the light differently than the Admiral's. Junior officers, Zextalon notes absently, his attention still focused on the simulation interface. "Hi, Admiral," the security lead ventures. "The diplomatic reception is concluding. Your presence is requested for the final protocols." Zextalon raises one limb in the hegemony gesture for patience, a dismissal so casual that it visibly startles his subordinates. Their neural implants likely flagging behavioral anomalies in their commander's conduct. This scenario is called asymmetric entropy, Mira explains, either unaware or unconcerned with the growing tension among the alien visitors. "It's different from the others because you're not the underdog." Her fingers dance across the interface, configuring parameters with practiced ease. "You command the advanced fleet this time, with superior technology in every category. Your opponent has outdated ships and limited resources. A straightforward victory, Zex Talon observes, mandibles clicking in what his species recognizes as mild amusement. You'd think so, Mira replies with a half-smile that triggers the Admiral's tactical instincts more effectively than any warning klaxon. But the defending force knows the terrain better than you do. They've had time to prepare. The simulation materializes. A complex star system with multiple asteroid fields, an unstable primary star, and a tangled web of gravitational interactions between its 7 planets. The Admiral's forces appear at the system's edge, a perfect hegemony battle group with cutting-edge technology that outclasses the Defender's capabilities by several generations. The objective, he asks, already calculating optimal approach vectors. Secure the habitable moon in the 4th planet's orbit, Mira explains. That's where the system's population and resources are concentrated. Zex Talon implements a standard hegemony approach for technological superiority scenarios. A measured advance with long-range sensor sweeps to identify threats before engagement. His battle group moves with mathematical precision, maintaining perfect formation as they navigate toward the objective. Interesting, Mira comments, watching his methodical progress. That's not how most kids play it. How do most kids play it? The Admiral asks, genuine curiosity temporarily overriding his professional demeanor. They usually rush straight in with their biggest ships, trying to overwhelm the Defender quickly, she explains. It works sometimes, but it's boring. Zex Talon's careful advance continues uncontested for several simulation minutes. The defending forces remain hidden, failing to register on his advanced sensors despite thorough sweeps. His tactical implants flag this as a potential ambush scenario, but the absence of any detectable threat signature contradicts standard combat doctrine. Your opponent appears to have abandoned the objective, he observes. They're there, Mira assures him, just waiting for the right moment. As his forces navigate a particularly dense asteroid field, the simulation suddenly shifts. The seemingly random distribution of asteroids reveals itself as a carefully arranged trap. Microthrusters, undetectable to his advanced sensors, activate simultaneously across hundreds of asteroids, creating a cascading kinetic event. The Admiral's perfectly arranged formation becomes a liability as ships struggle to maneuver independently in the rapidly evolving debris field. Primitive but effective, Mira comments as the simulation calculates mounting damage to the Admiral's fleet. They've been positioning those asteroids for months, using minimal power signatures your sensors would filter out as background noise. Zex Talon's mandibles click rapidly, a sign of intense focus among his species. The security detail's discomfort grows palpable as their commander hunches closer to the human child's game, completely absorbed in countering a strategy he had never encountered in 3 centuries of actual warfare. The Admiral's analysis chamber aboard the Hegemony flagship hums with quantum processors working at maximum capacity. 3-dimensional projections of Stellar Commander gameplay sequences hover in the air, fragmented into component algorithms. Zex Talon stands motionless at the center, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the cascading data streams as his neural implants process patterns that shouldn't exist. Cross-reference user demographic data with tactical innovation frequency, he commands. The ship's AI compiles the information instantly, presenting a distribution curve that confirms his growing suspicion. The most unpredictable and effective strategies originate disproportionately from players under 15 Earth years. Children, he murmurs, mandibles clicking in agitation. Their greatest tactical innovations come from children. The explanation materializes in his mind with crystalline clarity. Young humans, their neural pathways still forming, approach problems without the constraints of established doctrine. They haven't yet learned what's impossible, so they attempt solutions that experienced military minds would dismiss without consideration. Most fail, but those that succeed propagate throughout the game's ecosystem, evolving as millions of players refine and counter them. A secondary analysis reveals something even more disturbing. The game's underlying physics engine receives regular updates that increase its accuracy. What began 7 years ago as simplified entertainment now simulates actual space combat with 97.3% fidelity. The developers, a company called Quantum Forge, maintain connections with Earth's military research divisions. Personnel transfer records indicate a constant flow of expertise between the entertainment company and defense contractors. Authorization required. Restricted Hegemony Intelligence Report HX 7729. His neural implants notify him. Zextelon provides the necessary credentials and watches as a classified briefing materializes in his visual field. Asterisk Earth Species Assessment. Human entertainment media demonstrates unusual fixation with warfare scenarios. Unlike other pre-conclave species who primarily glorify past victories, humans routinely simulate hypothetical conflicts, including scenarios where they face technologically superior opponents. This behavioral pattern requires additional study, but appears consistent with their documented tendency toward competitive innovation. Asterisk. The report, filed 87 days ago, had been categorized as low-priority cultural observation. The hegemony intelligence apparatus had identified the pattern, but completely missed its significance. Computer, analyzed the tactical innovation rate within Stellar Commander compared to hegemony military doctrine evolution over the past 5 years, Zextalon commands. The results materialized before him. Hegemony tactical doctrine, refined over 12,000 years of peace, has evolved at a near-constant rate of 1.2% annually, optimizations of established principles rather than fundamental innovations. In contrast, Stellar Commander gameplay strategies have undergone 7 major paradigm shifts in 5 years, with entirely new approaches emerging approximately every 8 months. Most disturbing of all, the simulation's tactical learning curve accelerates after each paradigm shift. When a dominant strategy emerges, the game's player base rapidly develops counters, creating an evolutionary arms race of ideas that continuously reshapes the competitive landscape. The parallels to actual warfare are unmistakable, but occurring at speeds impossible in traditional military hierarchies. Computer, project strategic outcomes of potential conflict with humanity assuming continuation of observed innovation rates. The AI hesitates, an unprecedented occurrence that triggers multiple system diagnostics. Zextalon waits as the quantum processors reconfigure to handle the calculation parameters. Finally, the projection appears, a probability curve so flat that it borders on computational nonsense. The AI cannot predict with any statistical confidence how human military doctrine will evolve beyond a 17-month horizon. For the first time in his 3-century military career, Zextalon faces an opponent whose actions cannot be modeled with acceptable accuracy. The implication sends a tremor through his crystalline form. The hegemony strategic planning, based entirely on prediction and optimization, becomes fundamentally unreliable against human unpredictability. This is our primary fusion research facility. The human diplomat explains as the hegemony delegation enters a sprawling complex of buildings. We've achieved sustained reactions at 142% efficiency over input energy. The other hegemony officials exchanged the equivalent of amused glances. Their civilization mastered such technology before humans discovered agriculture. But Zextalon studies the facility with new eyes, noting details his colleagues dismiss as primitive inefficiency. Your containment systems appear redundant, he observes, indicating the multiple overlapping magnetic field generators. That configuration requires significantly more power than an optimized single-field approach. The facility director, a gray-haired woman named Dr. Ivanova, smiles with unexpected pride. Absolutely correct, Admiral. We call it distributed resilience. If any component fails, the others compensate automatically. We could lose half our generators and still maintain containment. At the cost of efficiency, adds a junior hegemony official, mandibles clicking in what translates as condescension. At the cost of theoretical efficiency, Dr. Ivanova corrects politely, but with practical survivability. 3 years ago, we lost primary power during a geomagnetic storm. The redundant systems kept the reaction stable for 17 hours until repairs were completed. Zex Talon's auxiliary eyes dilate slightly, the equivalent of raised eyebrows. Hegemony fusion facilities, while 43% more energy efficient, would catastrophically fail within minutes of similar power loss. The realization triggers an analysis sequence in his neural implants. Humans consistently prioritize adaptability and resilience over perfect efficiency. Your approach appears situationally logical, he acknowledges, earning surprised looks from both human and hegemony officials. As the tour continues, the Admiral begins asking unexpected questions that confuse his delegation and hosts alike. In the manufacturing sector, he inquires about failure rates rather than production metrics. In the transportation hub, he asks about emergency protocols rather than efficiency algorithms. Each answer reveals the same pattern. Humans build systems expecting failure and disruption, embedding multiple contingencies into their infrastructure that hegemony designers would consider wasteful redundancy. During lunch, Zex Talon sits beside a human military officer who casually mentions their wildly unrealistic training scenarios. How are they unrealistic? The Admiral asks, mandibles perfectly still in a deliberate show of casual interest. Oh, the parameters are basically designed to be impossible. The officer laughs. Last month's exercise assumed we'd lose all quantum communications, half our fleet, and face an enemy with perfect cloaking technology, simultaneously. The cadets complained it wasn't fair. How did they perform? Zex Talon asks, his neural implants recording every word. Surprisingly well, actually. They abandoned standard protocols entirely and cobbled together an unconventional response using deprecated technology and some truly creative applications of mining equipment. The officer shrugs. That's the point of these exercises, to break them out of doctrinal thinking. Break them out of doctrinal thinking. The phrase triggers cascading connections across the Admiral's analysis matrix. The hegemony trains its officers to perfect implementation of established doctrine. Humans deliberately train theirs to abandon doctrine when necessary. This fundamental philosophical difference extends across all human systems, Zex Talon realizes. Their infrastructure, education, even their entertainment, all designed with the assumption that circumstances will change unpredictably, requiring continuous adaptation rather than perfect optimization. As the delegation leaves the military academy, a group of cadets rushes past, arguing intensely about a tactical simulation. The Admiral recognizes phrases from stellar commander scenarios interspersed with references to actual military history. The boundaries between human entertainment, education, and military preparation blur in ways that defy hegemony categorization. A civilization that turns warfare into a game simultaneously transforms games into warfare preparation, creating a continuous feedback loop of tactical innovation that spans their entire culture. The High Council cannot accept these conclusions. Sub-Hierarch Bexmoron states, his crystalline form pulsing with frequencies that indicate deep agitation. The 12 council members arrayed in the quantum-linked communication chamber project similar patterns of disbelief and concern. Zex Talon stands perfectly still, his exoskeleton carefully maintained at neutral resonance despite the unprecedented challenge to his judgment. 3 centuries of impeccable service now questioned because of one report. The assessment follows standard protocols and is supported by observational data. He replies, transmitting accompanying evidence packets through his neural interface. Your data may be accurate, Admiral, but your interpretation contradicts established species development models. Counters Arch Analyst Turvexis, the Council's senior xenobiologist. No emerging civilization has ever presented the psychological profile you describe. All species follow predictable technological and doctrinal evolution paths. All previously encountered species, Zex Talon corrects with subtle emphasis. Humans appear to be an outlier. The chamber resonates with harmonic patterns indicating collective dismissal. The Admiral accesses his neural implants and projects the holographic recording of Mira playing Stellar Commander. The Council watches in silence as the child's unconventional tactics systematically dismantle textbook hegemony approaches. This is merely a game, Tervexis observes. Entertainment has no bearing on actual military capability. I believed similarly until discovering this, Zextalon responds, transmitting classified data acquired through deep analysis of Earth's information networks. The projection shifts to show military training simulations running on nearly identical physics engines as the civilian game, with tactical innovations flowing bidirectionally between entertainment and actual military development. Their military deliberately releases simplified versions of their training programs as entertainment, then harvests the most successful strategies developed by civilians, including children, for implementation in actual doctrine, he explains. They've created an unconscious tactical think tank encompassing their entire population. The Council's resonance patterns shift from dismissal to concern, but still not alignment with the Admiral's assessment. Even accepting this unusual approach, Sub-Hierarch Vexmoran argues, they remain centuries behind our technological development. Their ships, weapons, and industrial capacity cannot threaten the hegemony regardless of tactical innovation. Technology alone does not determine military outcomes, Zextalon counters, projecting historical data from Earth's conflicts. Humans have repeatedly demonstrated that inferior technology wielded with superior tactics can overcome conventional advantages. Their military history is defined by asymmetric conflicts where seemingly superior forces were defeated through unconventional approaches. The Admiral transmits his most disturbing finding. The hegemony standard predictive models fail completely when attempting to model human strategic evolution beyond short time horizons. The quantum certainty engines that have guided hegemony planning for millennia produce only statistical noise when projecting human behavior more than 2 decades forward. We cannot predict them, he concludes. Our entire strategic approach assumes opponents will follow logical optimization patterns that humans routinely abandon in favor of creative disruption. What precisely are you suggesting, Admiral? Asks First Administrator Cal Zurex, the Council's senior member. That we classify humans as a Class 1 threat despite their technological inferiority. I am suggesting we recognize a new category of potential threat. Zextalon responds. Our classification system measures species against known parameters of development and behavior. Humans operate outside these parameters. Impossible. Several Council members transmit simultaneously, their harmonic patterns indicating fundamental rejection of concepts that contradict established models. Encountering the impossible should prompt revaluation of our assumptions, not denial of evidence. The Admiral responds, breaking protocol with a directness that sends harmonic ripples through the communication chamber. For 17 seconds, an eternity in hegemony communication, the Council remains silent, processing implications that threaten paradigms underpinning their civilization for millennia. Finally, First Administrator Cal Zurex speaks. We will review your data, Admiral. Until consensus is achieved, standard integration protocols for pre-conclave species will proceed. You are dismissed. 3 orbital cycles later, Zextalon receives the Council's decision with the calm demeanor befitting his rank. His private chambers aboard the Hegemony command vessel reveal nothing of his inner state as the quantum-secured transmission unfolds before him. Integration Protocol 7 Alpha has been approved for human civilization, announces First Administrator Cal Zurex. Standard technological barriers will be implemented at their system boundaries. Knowledge transfer restrictions will follow Category 3 parameters. The Council has determined that your assessment, while noted for its thoroughness, ultimately represents an overestimation of human capabilities. I understand, Zextalon responds, his harmonic frequencies perfectly controlled. Furthermore, continues the First Administrator, the Council requires your presence in the Homeworld Strategic Division. Your extensive contact with humans necessitates cognitive recalibration to ensure analytical objectivity. Cognitive recalibration. The Admiral recognizes the euphemism for what humans would call brainwashing, the hegemony's standard response to members who develop perspectives that threaten consensus. The process would eliminate his recent insights, returning him to conventional thought patterns deemed appropriate for his station. "I will comply," he transmits, revealing nothing of the decision already crystallizing in his mind. After the transmission ends, Zex Talon accesses his private console, the one free from standard monitoring protocols, due to his rank privileges. His neural implants interface directly with Earth's primitive information networks through channels the hegemony considers too obsolete to monitor. The message he transmits is brief, encoded within entertainment data packets that flow continuously between human systems. "Your children play games that terrify me. We should discuss this further." He directs the message to Earth's diplomatic corps, specifically to the department that handles cultural exchange programs. Within hours, a response arrives buried in a transmission about educational cooperation initiatives. Cultural understanding begins with play. Visit welcome. Suggest civilian attire. One standard cycle later, Admiral Zex Talon of the Galactic Hegemony reports equipment malfunction in his personal shuttle during routine inspection of Earth's moon. By the time the Hegemony locates the shuttle's beacon, they find only an empty vessel and no trace of the Admiral's quantum signature. On Earth, in a small apartment in what humans call Geneva, the former Admiral sits across from Earth's Assistant Undersecretary for Interspecies Education, a deliberately minor official selected to minimize attention. Between them floats a holographic display showing the latest version of Stellar Commander. "We've incorporated some of your insights about hegemony tactical doctrine," explains Dr. Elena Reyes, the Undersecretary. "Our developers were particularly interested in your observations about predictive optimization algorithms." "My insights benefit humans," Zex Talon observes. "Why would I betray my civilization this way?" Dr. Rice studies the crystalline being thoughtfully. Is it betrayal to recognize that isolation leads to stagnation? The hegemony has perfected a single approach to the universe. We offer thousands of imperfect alternatives. The former Admiral's auxiliary eyes dilate in what humans are learning to recognize as contemplation. Perfection is vulnerable to the unexpected. The hegemony has forgotten this truth over millennia of uncontested dominance. "And you believe we can help them remember?" she asks. "Not directly," Zex Talon responds. "The Council would never accept human perspectives, but perhaps through indirect means." His mandibles click softly as he accesses the game's interface. "If we modified certain elements of this simulation and released versions throughout hegemony space as entertainment." Dr. Rice smiles. "Teaching through play, beginning with their children." "Precisely," the former Admiral agrees. After all, a sufficiently engaging game isn't recognized as education until the learning has already occurred.